Hey everyone. Uh, I just want to do another little random video to talk about kind of the evolution of looking for a raid between Pandaria and Warlords. Um, for me, through this Pandaria, that was my main form of raiding. That was really my only form of raiding until like about the tail end. Um, I didn't really have a guild until midway, partway through that. Um, so my main progression of raiding was LFR. Um, I always felt it. It felt it didn't feel the same as raiding with regular a regular group of 10 or 25, but it filled that raiding need that I had. So it felt right. It didn't seem too easy a lot of times. You know, if people did something wrong, it was very easy to screw everything up and wipe. Wiping was possible. You know, when it first came out, as expansion went on, some of the earlier LFRs, were stupid easy, but still, when it was current, it felt, you know, it felt right. It felt not not easy, but wasn't hard. You definitely knew there was a difference between LFR and normal, or even heroic. um, but then we found about Warlords. They kept talking about how they were going to turn LFR into tourist mode. And for me, that kind of scared me because I didn't want it to be like too easy, like, you know, just tap boss and it dies. I still wanted some mechanics. I wanted, to be somewhat of a mirror of the normal raid. Um, and so, well, another thing too, they're taking out of the LFR version of the tier sets in Warlords, which they kind of went back on the LFR set bonus sets are you know good enough compromise to me. Um, for the most part, that's all my ults will ever get is that, and it's nice to have some kind of a bonus, even if it isn't the same as the tier. Uh, like a weaker form of the tier, it's still nice to have. Um, but yeah, once they were talking about that, it scared me. Then the game actually, the expansion comes out, and the first wave of LFR comes out, and it was pretty much how they put it. It was tourist mode. It was, go in, don't give a shit about mechanics because you pretty much didn't need them. Just kill the boss, and that was about it. The only one I think in High Mall LFR that you had to at least have some idea of the mechanics was the Emperor. That was about it. And even it was very lenient on the mechanics. I mean, you could stand in the mines and still still end up killing the boss. So it didn't feel right. I it really made me rethink, do I really need to ever do LFR now? Because at that point, I had a guild that rated normal LFR, or uh, rated normal Hymal at that point. And we were getting to Emperor. We may not necessarily always killed him. If well, I never did. The rest of them did. But yeah, just it was very unfulfilling and really bad. Um, so then finally, the second half of the tier comes out because they did the half tier stuff with Black Rock Foundry, and the minute you walk in there, it felt like a completely different, LFR. It felt a little bit more like the LFR of Pandaria, where most of the bosses were all like a little slightly weaker mirrors of their normal counterparts. And if you didn't do the mechanics right, then you weren't going to kill the boss for the most part. Um, and the bosses that actually drop the set bonuses, they were tougher bosses. You know, and it felt better. It felt a lot better. Doing LFR that way. Um, like I said, it felt more like the Pandaria LFRs. Um, and for the most part, that's how Hellfire said it felt too. It It hasn't been too easy. Definitely if you know you don't do mechanics on some fights, it's more lenient than other fights if you don't do mechanics right. But for the most part, you have to have some idea what the mechanics are for most of these fights in order to kill the boss, which feels right to me. It feels more like raiding. Um, LFR groups may not be the best groups to ever go in, but you know, if you can handle the trolling, then it, it's not bad. It's definitely a nice way to gear up alts and keep them somewhat current. Um, I took my Flexion Warlock into a normal um, Black Rock Foundry at one point, and she was able to keep up with everyone else that was in normal gear, and she was decked out in the LFR gear set bonus stuff, and she was able to keep up and not be horrible. So I feel like LFR is still something very much necessary to WoW. I don't believe that it's killed rating or whatever. Um, it's it's fun, at least for me. Um, when I'm not doing raids with my guild, I'm raiding on my alts. My shaman's been my favorite lately. Um, and it's satisfying. It scratches that itch, that raiding itch. Um, so throughout, I think Warlords, it's definitely LFR completely turned around. Yeah, it is sort of tourist mode. I mean, you are going to get through the bosses. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When people leave, the bad people leave or get kicked, You bring in people that actually will, you know, are aware of the mechanics. So that's about it. Actually, I will say one thing though about LFR Archimon or Archimon on that came out this week. He needs a nerf, or at least like the ads need a nerf. I think because the tanks would get banished, and you know no one wanted to go in. Of course, I went in a couple of times stupidly with the tank, and even with 10 stacks of determination, and you know pulling 50, 60k TPS on those ads that they weren't going down. Uh, I think, yeah, the last attempt I made in the LFR Wing 5 video that I put up, we got them down to 10%. At that point, that's when I got a headache and I just had to leave. I had to leave at that point. 2.5 hours, I had to leave, you know. But I think at some point, they'll probably nerf it a little bit, or buff something or whatever to make that fight a little bit more LFR friendly. Every now and then happens. I mean, it happened in what was it? Siege of Orgrimmar. Can't remember what boss it was. I think it was General something. I can't remember what his name was. It was after the shamans. He was kind of overtuned the first couple of days, and they knocked down his health a little bit and made it a little bit more LFR friendly. So I hope this video is okay for everyone. Enjoy your weekend. Goodbye.